What's up, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're finally talking about a Nintendo Direct again. That's right, we are once again at the time of year where we feel like talking about a Nintendo Direct is the right thing to do. This is something that obviously goes through the news cycle every couple of months because typically Nintendo is doing a Nintendo Direct every few months. And since the pandemic, the schedule has been very wonky and sporadic and much harder to predict, but that hasn't stopped a lot of us from A, wanting a Nintendo Direct every few months, and B, expecting a Nintendo Direct every few months. And here we are now at the very end of August, coming up on September for 2022. And as most of us know, September has been a very firm month for Nintendo Directs to happen. I think going back 6 or so years, Nintendo has held a Nintendo Direct every single September, and that even includes the weirdness of 2020 where they were doing partner presentations and whatnot. So there's a lot of reason for us to think that a Direct will happen next month. Of course, if you just look through your gaming news feed on YouTube, you're probably seeing a ton of people over the past week talking about Nintendo Direct theories and predictions and is it going to happen kind of stuff. And that's partly because, again, we expect one in September, and then also partly because there has been some folks and insiders who have been trying to say and leak the fact that they've heard a Nintendo Direct will happen in September. And I'll just be honest with you guys here at the beginning of this video, I believe it. I definitely think we are going to see a Nintendo Direct in September. It is too consistent for Nintendo to always be doing them in September to suddenly have them not hold one this month. I just think that, yes, we're going to see a main Direct happen in September. Not something like the partner presentation we saw in August. That wasn't really exciting for me. As you guys know, I'm the only person in the world who wasn't into it. I think we're going to get a regular Direct, just like the leaks say and just like everyone else has been theorizing and discussing on YouTube. Now, it's worth noting that Nate the Hate is one of the primary folks and quote-unquote insiders who have been claiming that a Nintendo Direct is going to happen in September. And I know Nate. I've been on the Spawncast with him many times. I'm sure I've mentioned that before in previous videos. He's a good dude. He definitely does know things, and he's been right way more often than he hasn't been. And so, on top of the fact that it just logically makes sense for a Direct to happen in September, someone like Nate saying pretty confidently that he just believes or knows that it's going to happen, to me just adds more fuel to the fire. So, I just really expect one to happen in September, which is very exciting because, again, as one of the few people who wasn't very impressed with the partner showcase last month, I'm really just ready for a real Direct and something to set up next year. That's the real focus of a Direct at this time of year, at least in my eyes, is more of a setup for what's going to be happening in the first half of 2023. It's not going to be so much about 2022, although I do expect one or two things to maybe pop up there that we'll talk about. This is more about next year. What's going to happen in 2023? We're close enough to the end of 2022, as insane as that sounds to say, and we have enough games coming on the Switch that we already know about that we don't need a whole lot of surprises and announcements about 2022 games, and we don't need a whole lot of updates on games we know that we're going to play. Yeah, they're going to update us about Mario and Rabbids and Bayonetta 3, which I definitely want more info on that. Maybe Pokemon, but I think they usually do that stuff separately. They're not going to do Splatoon because they just had a Splatoon Direct. So they're going to update us on some current things we know about, but for the most part, it would, in theory, be pumping up stuff for early next year. Now, of course, the first thing we all think about is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. What the hell is going on with that game? It was supposed to release this year. It got delayed until spring of next year. The current stated timeline from Nintendo about Breath of the Wild 2 is spring 2023, which is March, April, June or something? I don't know my seasons exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's that March to June time is what's considered spring. And that's all the first half of the year for sure. And so, while I would think that by the time Breath of the Wild 2 is ready to come out, Nintendo will give us a massive, massive blowout of that game, I do think that it's possible if the game is sticking to early 2023, even though I suspect it might get delayed till the end of the year. If it sticks to early 2023, then maybe they do give us an initial veil pulling on that game in a direct in September and at least show us the title and maybe even give us a date. If they give us a new trailer that says this is the official title, it's officially coming out on this exact date, and if it's, spring 2023 that date happens, then we'll have something to go on, and they might say, and in January, we're going to give you like a 1 hour presentation and show you a ton of gameplay and really discuss that game. I think it's possible to get a major update in the September Direct and the full blowout after the new year starts. Now, one of my most recent videos was primarily focused on the idea of any Zelda ports being announced and released this year in 2022. Obviously, mostly focusing on the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and I still think that's possible. As I noted in that video, we did see a situation with Mario 3D All-Stars where they were able to announce that game in early September, and only 2 weeks later, also in September, release that game. And that was a collection of 3 games, Mario games, that were ported in HD to the Switch. And so, if they wanted to do either a double pack of those games or 2 individual releases, or 1 release now and 1 release next year, it's not crazy for them to announce one of those games and then a few weeks or even a month later release that game or that double pack or whatever they might do, and still make that a surprise announcement at a September Direct for a game that will still release in 2022, and that of course also ticks the box of a Zelda release in 2022, given the fact that Breath of the Wild 2 was delayed until next year. So, like I said, I made a whole 15-minute video on that topic where I went really in depth, and that was a lot of fun. But there's another franchise that I think could have a great chance at having a presence at a September Direct in the exact same scenario as those games, and that, of course, is Metroid Prime. Of course, you guys knew I had to talk about it. That's what I do on my channel, is I talk about Metroid, and I theorize, and I speculate, and I just wish for Metroid. That's what this whole thing is about for me. And obviously the Metroid Prime trilogy or remaster, remake, whatever, is that topic that won't die. Very similar to the Nintendo Switch Pro over the past several years. We've all been talking about pros, and we've all been talking about the Metroid Prime trilogy. And, I don't know what to say about it anymore other than I still just believe it's happening. The things that I've heard over the years about Nintendo cranking away at some sort of Metroid Prime re-release on the Switch, I know it sounds cliche to say that there's so much smoke to this fire, but it's really true. And, yeah, you could make a case for the fact that smoke has existed for 4 or 5 years, and we've still never seen the fire. And you're right, I won't deny it, but it just makes too much sense. There has been too much conversation about it. And there's even this year been conversation, and someone like Jeff Grubb doubling down saying, I know it's happening. I heard it from a specific source. And just like everyone, Jeff hasn't been right 100% of the time, but he's been right often enough that I really feel like this one's true, and it lines up with things that we've been hearing and that I've been hearing for a long time. And it would just be so great, following up the year that Metroid Dread released last year, for Nintendo to release either a Metroid Prime trilogy in HD or a remake of Metroid Prime 1. Both have been topics in the conversation, both have been rumored, and, I don't know. I just believe that something like this does exist. I don't see a world where Nintendo doesn't eventually bring the old Prime games to the Switch. I mean, they've done it with 3 Mario games with the 3D All-Stars. They've done it with Skyward Sword. They did it with Xenoblade Chronicles 1. They've ported a crap ton of Wii U games over to the Switch. And Metroid Dread was a massive hit. It's the #1 best-selling, biggest Metroid game of all time, and it achieved that in only 6 months. So clearly there's a Metroid audience out there, and clearly Metroid can perform very well on the Switch. Metroid Prime 4 already needs whatever kind of not help that it can get, but any kind of promotion and anything to hype up the Metroid Prime name would only be a good thing. So there's only a case to be made for why Nintendo would be bringing Metroid Prime or a trilogy over to the Switch than why they wouldn't. So then it just comes down to timing. Was Jeff Grubb's statements true? Were the other things that we've all been hearing for years true? And I want to think that yes, which means, to bring it back to the Direct conversation, if a Direct happens in September, just like I think there's a chance they could announce some Zelda ports and release them this year, there could also be a chance that instead it's Metroid Prime. Either that huge remake or a trilogy remaster that's done in HD, whatever form it takes, because there's been so many rumors about the form it would take, there's a chance Nintendo announces it, and only a few weeks later, they release it. And then we get a Metroid Prime release of some kind, you know, re-release in 2022. I think that it's possible, and really, if you think about it, kind of the purpose of this video and conversation is that if we get a Nintendo mainline Direct, it's really the last chance for either Metroid Prime games or Zelda games to get ports announced and then also released in 2022 before the year is over. Because like I said, I think most of a September Direct would be focused on 2023 games. But if they want to give us one or two 2022 surprises to just squeeze them in right before the year ends, it's a great time for Metroid Prime, and it's a great time for Zelda. And so that's really most of what I have to say about this. You know, I really think that a September Direct makes sense. I want to believe it's going to happen. I do believe it's going to happen. I mean, anything is possible. Nintendo may shock us and stay silent for a long time. They shocked us over the summer. We all thought they were going to give us a big summer mainline Direct and something to take the place during E3. Microsoft and EA and Summer Games Fest and Capcom did all these presentations. We absolutely expected Nintendo to do the same, and they didn't do it, you guys. So, with so many games still coming out in the back half of the year and for holiday 2022, maybe Nintendo really is comfortable riding this out. And maybe they feel they don't need a Direct in September, and they don't need to prime us for 2023 until much, much later. So we could be wrong on this, but I just don't think we are. I just really do believe in the September Direct. So I'm not leaking anything, so don't take it as me trying to say that I've heard stuff. I'm just going off of what's out there and just my own personal beliefs. It makes sense to me. I think we would hopefully hear about Breath of the Wild 2, and we might get the Zelda ports or the Prime Trilogy stuff. That would be my hope and my desire. So that's what I have to say. Tell me what you think below. With that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video. Bye-bye.